Welcome to this audio guide to Case in Point by Marc P. Cosentino. This guide is designed to walk you through the key ideas of the book in a clear, structured, and practical way, so you can absorb it while driving, walking, or relaxing. Across this audio, you'll hear about what consulting is, how case interviews work, the core IV case system, and the main business situations you will face in interviews, along with examples and mindset advice. Think of this as a spoken companion to the book, not a word-for-word reading. Chapter 1. What consulting is really about. Consultants are, in simple terms, professional problem solvers hired to help organizations make better decisions. Companies bring in consultants when they face complex, high-stakes questions, whether to enter a new market, why profits are falling, or how to restructure operations. Consultants analyze data, structure problems, and recommend practical actions. They act as neutral outsiders and bring experience from many industries. For you as a candidate, that means consulting is less about memorizing business buzzwords and more about showing disciplined, structured thinking under pressure. Why do people want these jobs so badly? The reasons are fairly consistent. You work with smart, ambitious colleagues. You're exposed to different industries, functions, and geographies. You build skills in analysis, communication, and leadership at high speed. And you get the chance to influence big decisions early in your career. In this sense, consulting is attractive if you like steep learning curves, collaborative problem solving, and a fast-paced environment where every few months you may be on a different project with a new client and new challenge. Chapter 2. Inside the consulting interview. Now, let's step inside the consulting interview itself. A typical first-round interview is divided into two main components, the behavioral or fit portion and the case interview. Often, you'll have two back-to-back interviews, each around 45 minutes, where both parts appear. The behavioral portion tests who you are. Expect questions such as, tell me about yourself, why consulting, and tell me about a time you led a team, handled conflict, or failed at something important. Here, the interviewer evaluates your maturity, clarity, teamwork, leadership, and self-awareness. The stories you choose and how you tell them matter as much as the content. The case interview is the centerpiece. You're presented with a business problem, perhaps a company with declining profits or a firm considering entering a new market, and you're asked to analyze it aloud. Cases can be combined with short market sizing questions, where you estimate things like the size of a market or the number of users of a product. During this part, the interviewer is listening for structure, logic, numeracy, and communication. Do you clarify the objective? Do you break the problem into clear parts? Do you work through the math calmly? Do you synthesize a recommendation at the end? These interviews simulate real consulting work in compressed form. You're also expected to ask questions of the interviewer, not only about the case, but about the firm itself. Intelligent, specific questions show that you have done your homework and that you are genuinely curious about the work and the culture. Chapter 3. The main types of case questions. Cosentino groups case questions into several distinct categories, each with a different purpose. Understanding these categories helps you know what skill is being tested at any moment. The first category is brain teasers. These are short puzzles or logic problems, such as the classic, why are manhole covers round? The goal is not really the exact answer, but to see how you think. Do you explore multiple angles, state your assumptions, and reason clearly? Brain teasers assess creativity, logical thinking, and composure. The second category is back-of-the-envelope or market sizing questions. Here, you estimate the size of a market or quantity. For example, the annual number of car tires sold in a country, or the number of gas stations in a city. You are expected to make reasonable assumptions, structure the problem into smaller parts, and execute clean arithmetic. The interviewer wants to see how you approach vague, quantitative questions rather than whether you land on the precise figure. The third category is factor questions. These begin with prompts like, what factors would you consider when? For instance, what factors would you consider if a company is thinking about entering a new market? These questions test the breadth and organization of your thinking. You must identify relevant issues, group them logically, and prioritize what matters most. The fourth and most important category is the full business case. This is an extended problem involving a company, a specific situation, and a clear or implicit objective. Examples include profitability problems, pricing strategy, growth strategy, mergers and acquisitions, or turnarounds. Here you bring everything together, clarifying the objective, structuring the analysis, interpreting data, doing math, and arriving at a recommendation with risks and next steps. Cosentino also proposes a set of case commandments, which are essentially rules of conduct for case interviews. These include listening carefully, taking notes, summarizing the question back, confirming the objective, asking clarifying questions, using a clear structure, working through the numbers, being coachable, and always finishing with a concise conclusion. Following these commandments keeps you from making common, avoidable mistakes. Chapter 4. The Ivy Case System, your core toolkit. The Ivy Case System is the central framework presented in the book. It gives you a repeatable way to open and handle almost any business case. Think of it as your default playbook when an interviewer starts speaking. It begins with 4 steps you use at the start of every case. Step 1. Summarize the question. In your own words, restate the situation and the objective. This shows active listening and buys a few seconds to think. Step 2. Verify the objective. Ask explicitly what success looks like for example. So our goal is to increase profits by 20% within 2 years. Is that correct? This reduces the risk of solving the wrong problem. Step 3. Ask clarifying questions. These can cover the company's products, customers, geography, competitive landscape, time frame, or any constraints. You're not just fishing for clues. You are narrowing down the problem and building context. Step 4. Lay out your structure. Present the framework you will use, such as breaking profitability into revenue and cost drivers, or analyzing a market entry through market, competition, and company capability lenses. After these 4 steps, the Ivy Case System organizes cases into 12 common scenarios. You do not need to force every case into a rigid category, but these scenarios guide your thinking. The first is entering a new market. Here, you consider questions about the market size and growth, customer segments, competitive intensity, barriers to entry, and whether the client has the capabilities to succeed. You might also consider entry modes, building from scratch, partnering, or acquiring. The second is industry analysis, where you look at the attractiveness of an industry using tools like Porter's 5 forces, the threat of new entrants, the power of suppliers and buyers, the intensity of rivalry, and the threat of substitutes. The goal is to understand how profitable the industry is likely to be over time. A third scenario is mergers and acquisitions. In these cases, you examine strategic fit, value creation from synergies, financial considerations, and integration risks. You may be asked whether the client should buy a target company and at what price. Here, you combine strategic reasoning with financial basics and risk assessment. Another scenario is new product introduction. You explore the customer need, target segments, differentiation, pricing, costs, and go-to-market plan. You also consider cannibalization of existing products and the competitive response. There are scenarios for pricing, deciding how to set or change prices, weighing cost-based pricing, value-based pricing, and competitive benchmarks, and for growth strategies, which might include expanding into new segments, regions, or channels, or launching new products in existing markets. The system also covers starting a new business, responding to competitors, increasing sales, reducing costs, improving overall profitability, and turning around a failing company. Each scenario has its own question tree, a map of key branches to explore. By internalizing these trees, you avoid blank page paralysis and can quickly outline your approach when the case begins. Chapter 5. Classic Business Frameworks and How to Use Them. Beyond the Ivy Case System, Cosentino introduces well-known business frameworks used across the consulting industry. These frameworks are not meant to be memorized mechanically, but to act as mental templates when structuring a problem. One common framework is the 5 C's: company, customers, competition, costs, and climate or context. This helps you think comprehensively about a business's situation. Another is the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion, which are useful when dealing with marketing, product, or revenue growth cases. Portfolio analysis is represented with the BCG matrix, which classifies business units or products as stars, cash cows, question marks, or dogs, based on market growth and relative market share. This is helpful when discussing resource allocation across a portfolio. For industry structure, Cosentino highlights Porter's 5 forces again, stressing its value in assessing long-term profitability of an industry. For internal operations, he mentions value chain analysis, breaking down a company's activities from inbound logistics and operations through marketing, sales, and service to identify where value is created and where costs can be improved. He also introduces the McKinsey 7S framework, which looks at strategy, structure, systems, skills, staff, style, and share values. This is helpful in organizational and change management cases, where alignment across these dimensions is crucial. Finally, the chapter reinforces basic financial literacy. You must understand revenue, costs, and profit, and how they appear on an income statement. Knowing the difference between fixed and variable costs, and how changes in volume affect profit, is essential for profitability and cost reduction cases. Chapter 6, Walking Through Practice Cases. The longest portion of Case in Point is devoted to practice cases. Instead of abstract theory, you see realistic business situations presented as dialogues between interviewer and candidate. This format illustrates not just what to say, but how to say it. For instance, consider a profitability case involving a bank whose profits are declining despite rising revenues. The candidate must probe where margins are being squeezed, whether costs have risen, whether product mix has shifted, and whether certain segments or channels have become less profitable. The interviewer provides data progressively, forcing the candidate to adjust the hypothesis. In a market sizing and product case, such as launching a new hairy growth pill, you might be asked to estimate the target population, adoption rates, pricing bands, and overall revenue potential. You would segment the population logically by gender, age, and hair loss severity, then decide on penetration rates and price points, always explaining your assumptions. A growth case, such as expanding a premium ice cream brand, might explore whether the company should enter new regions, expand into supermarkets from specialty shops, or introduce new flavors or formats. You analyze demand, operational implications, branding, and competitive response. By listening to these cases in audio form, you can imagine yourself as the candidate. After hearing the case prompt, you could pause the audio, outline your own structure, and then resume to compare your approach with a model dialogue. This active engagement is far more powerful than passively listening to the solution. Each case ends with a synthesis, a short, clear recommendation that states the answer, backs it up with key arguments and numbers, mentions risks, and suggests next steps. Training yourself to give such summaries, out loud and under time pressure, is central to case interview success. Chapter 7, Practicing with Others, the Roommate's Role. Cosentino includes a light, practical section addressed to roommates or friends helping candidates prepare. Its lessons apply equally well if you are organizing your own practice group. The message is simple. Even a non-business roommate can be a good mock interviewer if they follow a checklist. They should observe whether you summarize the case, verify the objective, ask clarifying questions, and present a structure before diving into the details. They should note whether you speak clearly, handle numbers confidently, and keep your thoughts organized. This section also emphasizes the emotional side of preparation. Case practice is mentally taxing. After long sessions, it is healthy to unwind, reflect, and reward progress. Consistency over time, rather than perfection in any single practice, is what builds real competency. Chapter 8, Mindset, How You Show Up. Beyond frameworks and math, consulting interviews are about the overall impression you create. Cosentino stresses that confidence, presence, and coachability often differentiate successful candidates who may not always have the perfect answer. Confidence does not mean arrogance. It means speaking clearly, maintaining eye contact, and trusting your logic once you have chosen a direction. It also means acknowledging when you need a moment to think, or when you have made an arithmetic mistake, and correcting it smoothly. Coachability is equally important. Interviewers sometimes drop hints or redirect you. Strong candidates listen, adjust their approach, and integrate new information without becoming defensive. This behavior models what clients and senior partners expect from consultants on real projects. Enthusiasm and positive energy matter more than many candidates realize. Interviewers often ask themselves, would I want this person on my team on a stressful project for several months? That question is as much about your attitude as your analytical ability. Chapter 9. Key Consulting Vocabulary. To close, the book provides a short glossary of consulting terms. Understanding these words makes communication smoother in interviews and on the job. You will encounter terms like bottom line, which refers to net profit, and top line, which refers to revenue. You will hear market share, barriers to entry, economies of scale, and fixed versus variable costs. Each term describes a simple concept, but you must be able to use them precisely. You will also hear the acronym MEIS, meaning mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. This describes a way of structuring ideas so that categories do not overlap and together cover the entire relevant space. Thinking and communicating in a MEIS way is a hallmark of consulting-style problem-solving. The glossary also includes labels for question types you will face, brain teasers, back-of-the-envelope questions, market sizing, and full business cases. Knowing these categories helps you quickly recognize the type of problem being posed and choose an appropriate approach. Closing narration. How to use this audio. To get the most from this audio-style summary, treat it as a repeated companion rather than a one-time listen. You can listen once to grasp the big picture, then return to specific chapters when preparing for interviews. For example, listen to the IVK system chapter right before a practice session, or replay the practice case discussion and pause to attempt your own structures. Over time, this repetition will make the frameworks and question types feel natural, so that in a real interview, you can focus on the actual business problem, not on recalling theory. Use this way, case in point, together with this expanded audio-friendly summary, becomes not just a book you read, but a toolkit you internalize and apply whenever you face a complex business problem or a high-pressure interview.